Nothing new.
So we all agree the agenda is approved.
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 Yes.
Oh, shall we start again? No? Okay. With the recording in progress.
That's just my backup.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, so then the adoption of the minutes. Are there any comments regarding the adoptions of the minutes from October the 25th, 2022? Rick?
No,
Chris?
none for me.
None for me.
None for me either.
Okay, all right, so then we can move on. Then there's public comments. So then the question is anybody of the public wishing to speak? And then Steph probably knows how they would do that. So are there people
Later in the agenda.
What's on the, it's just the standard item, I guess, on the list, but maybe we just can skip it.
Item 4.2 after the presentation.
Okay, so then we hand up to, we proceed with item 4, which is new business, which is today's application for 657 Channel View Drive. And then next is the presentation from Bowen Island's planner, Drew Backham.
You bet. So I'll share my screen here if that's all right.
Right.
So you all seen the presentation page?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So thank you, Board of Variance. So this is application BOV 2023-0011 for 657 Channel View Drive. So the property is located along Channel View Drive, specifically at the surrounded by Cliff Road and Taylor Road in the kind of southeast area of the island. Under the land use bylaw, it's zoned SR2, settlement residential 2. And the bylaw that's requested to be varied is section 4.5.2, subsection 1 of the land use bylaw, which is that the minimum setback for building from any lot line that abuts a highway is to be 4.6 meters. So here's some plans. We'll look at these in greater detail. We have the site plan and elevation plans of the proposed building. So here's the site plan. So showing the minimum setback, which is proposed for the proposed workshop at the south end of the site, and the setback to be varied is the setback from the south property line. So they're requesting a reduction of 0.98 meters from the minimum setback, so that the minimum setback from the highway would be reduced from 4.6 meters to 3.62 meters. And here you have some elevation plans of seeing the site overall as well as the proposed building. So there are reasons that they've given in the hardship letter, explain the reason for their variance request is that the variance would allow a positioning that would preserve sunlight for the yard and allow more space for passage between the buildings. The existing swimming pool is, the applicant explains it's disused and become unsightly. He talks about some high environmental footprint that it has, high costs and safety concerns. And to rebuild to build the proposed building in this location would allow reuse of the existing pool foundation.
Sorry, Drew, are you advancing slides?
Yes, yeah. Is that?
We're still in.
Oh, is that right?
Sorry, it took me a sec to notice.
Weird.
So maybe it's on the wrong screen.
Yeah, it's off with having multiple monitors. Let's see.
Okay, now we're at slide 7.
If I go over here.
Oh, now we're in your email. There's my name.
No, okay.
Get out of there.
It's just,
I think
sorry,
the share screen indicates a different monitor than the one that's actually sharing. It's super annoying.
yeah. Okay. Sorry. Let me fix that quick, guys.
And this will work just as long as you're advancing through.
Yeah. Let's see. Is this working now?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So I'll just do a brief backup. I can't go over everything, but just show you some pictures you guys missed. Sorry about that, guys. So yeah,
Sorry,
there's just
earlier.
yeah, no worries. All right, so yeah, here you can actually see the location of the property, surrounded by the 3 roads there. Here's where it falls in the zoning, the SR2 zone, covering this whole residential area there. There, yeah, site plan, elevation plans. Go more specific here. So here's a site plan that I was explaining. So yeah, that proposed setback that's on the south side. So you guys can see now the proposed building on the south side, and it's the setback from that south property line that's to be varied. So to be reduced by 0.98 meters. And then here are the like I said, elevation plans of the top one. You can see the whole site kind of proposed building, and then other buildings on site, and then bottom images are just of the proposed workshop. And then now, so site photos here. So on the left, that's an image of specifically of the disused pool. So this is standing inside the yard facing, I guess, west. And then the photo to the right is standing outside the yard facing east. And so this is basically like that's the kind of the existing sight lines as you see them would be unchanged, because the proposed building would be built just inside that fence setback. So, or the fence, the fence line. So yeah, so the kind of the level of visibility you see at the intersection there would be unchanged. That's about how it would look moving forwards, other than new fence and new buildings. And so yeah, in terms of alternative options, yeah, the workshop, the footprint could be relocated further inside the property. That would meet the setback, but then it would not allow reuse of that existing swimming pool foundation. And finally, there's the checklist here that I'll leave this on, and yeah, that has the Local Government Act guidelines pertaining to how the Board of Variance is to hear the application. So anyways, that's the end of my presentation. Do you guys want me to stop sharing screen at this point?
Yeah, that should be okay. Okay, so then I guess the next question is, are there any written submissions for there's one, the letter from the Bensons who live across the street, I believe. Would you read that out, Steph, or is it
Sure. Hello, we are Mike and Bean Benson, the owners of 690 Channelview Drive, directly across the street from 657 Channelview Drive. We are writing in full support of the approval of this application for a minor variance. This will have no negative impact on us or the neighborhood, and the new workshop will be a welcome addition.
Okay, and that's the only written submission, right?
That's all I have, Drew.
Okay.
Yep, that's all we received. Yeah.
Okay, and then item 4.2, the public opportunity to speak to the board. Are there any members of the public who like to speak? And Steph, how do they do that?
They would be on Zoom, and there's no one.
It would be on Zoom, so okay. So there is nobody eager to speak. All right. Okay, so then item 4.4, the Board of Variance discussion. And what I thought to do is to ask either Rick, maybe Rick, if you start with your
Sorry,
comment.
did the applicant get a chance?
This is not according to the list. Oh yeah, no, I'm wrong. Sorry. The applicant has now an opportunity to speak to the board. My apologies.
You're distracted by the palm tree.
Yeah. Well, so Henry or Deborah, go ahead.
Yeah, wishing to so quickly jump into the water behind and get into the nice warm water. Thank you, Drew, for representing this. This is pretty close to everything that we had talked about. If I can ask you to step back one slide, please.
Sure.
On the BOV checklist. No, sorry, one more. Just the pictures. As you can see in the picture on the left, the intent for this application, the intent for the variance application is to reuse the pool foundation that currently exists as part of the foundation. Were we to jog everything to the right, as discussed, we would have to, on the west side, which is where the fence is, that would probably not be as big a deal, but on the right-hand side, what you can see there is there's already a sort of retaining wall and all the rest of that stuff that would have to be torn down and completely rebuilt. And then also the space between the proposed workshop and the garage, which is existing. You can see that in the right-hand shot. You can see that apex is the garage. That gap in there would be considerably smaller and would then turn around and sort of reduce the light in that area, make it more difficult to sort of move things in and out of that area. So in respect to the hardship, it's a cost issue and a capacity and space issue and light issue once you have the new building in place. Other than that, as you can see from the designs, the intent was it to be fully other than the location of the south edge of the building. I'm open to answer any questions that anyone on the panel has.
Okay. Okay, so the members of the board, either Chris or who wants to speak first?
I don't mind speaking first. Rick can speak first if he'd rather.
Okay, I have it's a couple of questions on the plan. Is the intent to build the workshop using the existing retaining wall on the south side, like building your framework on top of that retaining wall?
No. We're going to retain the retaining wall for purposes of its visual impact and what it basically does right now. But we intend to use the southernmost edge of the pool to put a concrete beam in there and build the south wall of the workshop on that foundation.
Okay, so the retaining wall you're going to remove then on the south side, or leave it?
I'm just going to leave it.
Okay, and you're going to build on the pool side of that
Correct.
retaining wall.
Correct. What you see right there in that image is the steel walls of the pool. You could imagine that as the outside form of a concrete wall.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is that on the plan, it shows the retaining wall farther into the side yard than the 0.98 meters. And if you're going to build the shed on top of that retaining wall, then the variance would be greater than the 0.98 meters. That's the only reason I was asking the question.
That is correct. And it's for that reason, in addition to, at this point in time, the retaining walls held back stone. It hasn't held the weight of a building on top of it, and I would have to do engineering tests to confirm it to do that. I
see. And you also have a retaining wall on the north side that will remain as is that correct?
That is correct. The layer that is just on, you can see just on the right edge of that image, and essentially, all the way over to the garage, that is a level area that is filled with gravel and sand. And the retaining wall in there that's currently holding that. There'd be no intent to change that.
So you're proposing to use the floor slab of the pool as the slab inside of your workshop. Is that correct?
Correct.
So and the reason I'm asking that is that there's a man door on the north side, and it'll be coming in way above the floor line of the workshop. So you have stairs coming down on the inside, or?
The building will be built at quite a bit. It'll be higher than the pool deck, but yes, the door will be at the level of the area that you see on the right, and there will be internal stairs down to the floor in the workshop.
I see. Okay. And just one other question is, you have an overhead door on the west side, and that is, I guess, getting for equipment in and out. So are you planning to put a driveway or gravel walkway or anything from that up to the higher level?
No.
Okay. All right. No, really, I'm pretty familiar with it. I drive by your house every single day for the last 20 years.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
Sorry.
yeah, that's basically it for me.
Okay, Chris.
I had a lot of those same questions. I don't see that pool wall is going to serve as any kind of a foundation. It's going to require building inside of it to support the proposed building, or outside of it. Outside of it on the north side would be a possibility. I think Rick's questions and the answers answered my questions. If it was me building a workshop, I'd put the stairs on the outside down into the workshop, because I wouldn't want that much space taken out of the work area for stairs. But that's not my problem.
Well, you have to know that Chris has a very well organized, beautiful woodworking shop, right?
I may come over and grab some tips from you.
I'd be happy to. Maybe my over equipped workshop and underskilled worker.
Oh.
Maybe you could give me some tips.
We better stop talking, Chris. There's not room on the island for two of us over skilled.
Okay. All right.
All right. Chris, more comments or questions?
No, I mean, given the issue of that pool not being able to support any kind of a building wall, I mean, the foundation still has to yet be created. The question does come up, and I'm not really hung up on this. I think this is a good plan, but does it really require a variance if the whole thing has to be rebuilt anyway?
Well, we have a planner here, Drew.
Yeah, for new structure, the full setback of 4.6 meters does apply. So yeah, they're looking to build within that. So technically, it requires variance.
That's not my question.
Okay, sorry.
Try again.
I'm sure our architect friends can reinterpret my question unless it's.
No, I thought that Drew gave a pretty good answer, so you have to reinterpret your question.
Oh, yeah. Well, I understood the justification for this variance request is that the existing structure in place is useful to be utilized for the new building. However, I don't see anything there that can be utilized very effectively. So I'm wondering whether our variance request or whether the variance is required. I mean, it could easily be rebuilt in a position on the line that accommodated the existing rules.
Maybe, Drew, would you first comment on that as a planner?
Sure. I mean, I guess beyond just the walls itself, it's more about just, I guess, the location, the cleared area, and the footprint being reused. But yeah, as for whether or not this structure can at all be reused, just for a new build of this building and getting the building permitted, it triggers the planning review, and they have to meet that minimum setback. So yeah, in order to build within that, they need the variance. As for whether or not they would be forced to move outside that, I guess that's the board's decision as to whether or not this is considered a hardship or not. But yeah, the request is that to reuse this existing location and would have to waive the bylaw, the setback in order to do that.
To respond, Christopher, to the question, that my interpretation of the question is the intent is to use the pool footprint, and in terms of building structure on top of it, we were going to build a concrete beam on either side within the pool footprint, and use that as the primary structure on which the building would rest. Of course, at the time when we provide plans for permit, etc., it will all be sort of covered and addressed by an appropriate engineering assessment as to the use of the existing slab and all the rest of that. The concern with what I think I hear you suggesting, since the request is for a 0.98 meter incursion into the setback, would be to essentially jog the entire building north by 1 meter. The concern about moving the building north by 1 meter is twofold. One, we would have to take down the existing retaining wall that you can't see here. It's which is supporting the sand and gravel that gives me the flat level between the proposed workshop location and the garage. So it would require taking that down and then rebuilding that completely. It would also narrow the space between the workshop and the garage, thereby limiting or impacting the ability to use that space. And in the winter, since this is a building that is walking the south, it would sort of impact sunlight in the winter and those types of things. And we didn't want to lose a meter in overall width of the available workshop, looking to get that minimum viable sort of swing room in there for larger panels and larger boards. That was the rationale behind retaining the pool footprint, and thereby realizing that the pool historically had sort of developed this incursion, and we just want to that triggered this particular application. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, first of all, the variance is actually only a foot. I think in feet and inches, guys. Sorry. It's only a foot on the west side and 3 feet more or less on the right, which is the east side. If the shop were rotated and pushed forward a little bit, it would be within the byline requirements. And the footprint would stay the same. I understand what you're saying. I actually have worked within variances and used them to my benefit for many, many years. So I see what you're trying to do, but this seems so minor an inconvenience. I think rotating the building would even permit possibly continuing to use the retaining wall. So I'm not really too sure whether this merits the municipality making this exception at this point. I defer to my two architect friends who actually know what they're talking about. But
Come on, Chris.
I'm just asking.
You have to be specific. Who do you want to talk to? Rick or Fritz?
I'm asking you to be specific, Fritz, so you can help Rick understand what I'm talking about, and then both tell me what's wrong with it.
Well, I think both here are pretty clear what's proposed here. But I hear what you're saying. It's always like the big question is, when is something hardship? But there was actually another reason that was brought up as well. That was for, quote, sustainability or the use of materials. So the difference in building new is obviously that whatever is there is removed, and there's of course more excavation and there's more building. Now that was brought forward in the application as one of the justifications for working as much as possible with what's there, right? So that's kind of it. And then
there's nothing there. There's a void there.
No, there's a little bit more. I visited the site and I spent some time with Henry, who actually is referred to as Harry, I understand now. So you can choose how you want to address him. But I found it actually, if you go through the whole rationale, I'm kind of with him that it seems to be logical to do this. And I kind of agree with Chris, what you say, that it's really hard to figure out when something is hardship. Typically, it's not the money that is hardship, because then everybody has hardship. But but then also, to which degree do you weigh the fact that you have to be careful here, of course, but you asked me as an architect, right? Now, as an architect, we deal with a lot of regulations constantly all over the place. And I always say that regulations are invented or are created one day with all the best intentions, right? Now, I personally find that to get the best outcome is important. Now, of course, you have to watch that because that's not how the Board of Variance works. So I think that what you bring up, to which degree is it hardship, is a question. Can something be designed differently to meet the bylaws? I would say yes. I mean, you're right. Is that less appealing or more difficult for the applicant? It would be more difficult. They have a plan of building this, but you can argue everybody has a plan to build something. So I think technically you are right. And now I guess the question is that as a Board of Variance, how much do we weigh let's call it the environmental objectives, to disturb the site as little as possible and work as much as possible with what's there. And the other comment as was brought up is the pleasure or the functionality of what is left between the house and building new in a new location. So like it's more like I personally would prefer if it's approved, but I agree with you that it's not a clear case of hardship. It isn't like there isn't a different way of doing it. And at times, different ways of doing it can actually be quite expensive and unpleasant. So it's more like, I mean, like also if you go back, it has absolutely no impact on anybody, and it's definitely minor. So if you go through the list of justifying the application, it's not that difficult to explain why we would support it. But then if there would be opposition from people around, which apparently there isn't, then it would be hard to be very precise or very, how do you say that, convincing in establishing hardship.
I just have one extra question in regard to the slab. If that slab was built for a swimming pool, do you have any information as to the thickness, the amount of structural steel or rebar in it? And because you did mention that you'd be putting a concrete beam on both sides to support that shed. I just wondered if that's necessary or not.
I'm going to defer to an engineer's review, which is the next step after this. The slab itself, I do not know the level of steel that is in it, but I do know that it's 6 inches thick.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's exposed at the edges and it's 6 inches thick.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so then if you go through the report that Drew had prepared, and if you go through the criteria, then one of them says the Board of Variance may order that a minor variance be permitted from the requirements of the applicable bylaw, or that the applicant be exempted from whatever, right, which doesn't apply. But anyway, so you can argue the minor variance is there. Then you go to these items that are listed below. Then it all falls into place. So, but then you see what I mean? Because like if you go to if the Board of Variance has heard the applicant and any person notified under section 541, well, there was one letter of support, that's it. Then B finds that undue hardship would be caused to the applicant if the bylaw of section 531 is complied with. And so that is maybe minor hardship, but there is some form of hardship. Then C is of the opinion that the variance or exemption does not do any of the following. 1, result in appropriate development of the site, which I think is in both cases, you see exactly the same thing. So the answer is no. Adversely affect the natural environment. apparently, if you move it or if you build new, then there's more adversely effect of the natural environment, however little that may be. Then 3, a substantial effect to use and enjoyment of adjacent lands. Well, that is no, it has no impact on adjacent lands. Then 4, vary permitted uses and densities under the applicable bylaw. No, the uses and densities are conformed with. 3, defeat the intent of the bylaw. Every bylaw has an intent. Here, this is important if you're an architect. If you read the zoning schedule, and some municipalities are very good at that, like the city of Vancouver, it starts with the intent. So it will say the intent of the single family zoning schedule is to maintain the single family character of the neighborhood. And that same intent is now used for sites in the single family areas where you can put a duplex or a fourplex, as long as it respects the intent of the bylaw, which is that you maintain a residential character. So for me, it is like, I feel that there's enough here to say we approve it. And maybe with the notation that establishing the hardship came up as a discussion item is still a little bit, it's not as firm as some other cases, that's for sure. So, Drew, can you comment on that? Like, because, like, can you just explain with your experiences in variances, like what in your mind is a reasonable decision for the board to make?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead. Steph, were you saying something?
Oh, just saying you're on the spot. Sorry.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
you don't totally have to answer, but to give some guidance. How's that?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I largely agree with what you said. Yeah, I mean, financial hardship can't be the center of these requests, because, like you said, otherwise that would be everyone's reasoning. Yeah, I guess it's a question of largely, I guess, regarding just environmental impacts. That's I think about the biggest difference that would be made in terms of granting the variance or not would just be about, how much of the natural site is disturbed. Or I guess maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't use the word natural, because probably everything's been kind of regraded and things within the fence lines here. But
also, Drew, one thing I know for sure as an architect, the moment you build something new, there definitely is more disturbance. I've never seen that otherwise.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I guess the only other thing, you mentioned every bylaw has an intent. So interestingly, so this isn't just even the front setback or side setback. This is the setback that the variance triggers here, is the minimum setback from a highway. So, applicable to corner properties like this. So, I mean, reasonably that would be for the reason of sight lines. But yeah, as you can see, I mean, the fence legally built within the property lines is the visual barrier is already there. This isn't increasing the visual barrier. So I think the intent of the bylaw would still be upheld. I don't see any problematic situation created here where sightlines aren't being met. So yeah,
actually the fencing that you see now, in my mind, actually isn't really fencing. It is just privacy screening for the pool, because it's not on the property line. Well, most people would want to fence their property. The actual property line is much closer to the street, right? So, so for instance, the comments about the fencing, from my point of view, when the building is constructed, with or without a variance, in both cases, the building it is a hell of a lot more attractive than what's there now. And I would say that the fencing, the applicant can put fencing wherever the bylaw permits fencing to be, which is, if you want to fence your property, it's much closer to the road, because, as you know, 4.6 minus 1 meter is 3.6. It's still 12 feet.
Right.
For a visual reference, the property line is where that pink tag is hanging from the
you can see that actually there. Yeah, that's where it is. So that's where a fence can be, and somehow Bowen Island is very generous with heights of fencing. It can be 2 meters, which always surprises me, but there it is. So I'm saying is that if you see the visual impact on the road, you can have a 2-meter high fence that goes all the way around there. For me, it's kind of almost like a no issue at all. And if we can accept the minor hardship, so to speak. But somebody has to formulate that, or we can vote maybe, maybe
I
we.
formulated it.
Sorry. Good. There you go. Steph is an expert.
This is what your property taxes go towards. I think I'm not as knowledgeable of the file itself as you are, so please excuse if this is not super correct, but I've given it some shape. And you can help me with the content. Oh, can you unshare, please, Drew?
Oh, sure. Let's see, new share, but maybe pause share.
I can just kick you out, actually.
Yeah, just kick me out. Yeah.
There you go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I have this first, whereas the Board of Variance has heard the applicant and received the 1 email of support. Whereas the Board of Variance, you were talking about hardship, so you said minor hardship.
Moderate, I like.
You like moderate? Okay.
Well, I do, but we're with the 3 of us, right?
Anybody?
Yeah,
okay?
that's fine with me.
And then I took the liberty of sort of putting in what that hardship is to what I'm capturing, which is, tell me if I'm correct. Is there like, don't have to.
You change destruction to removal, would require the removal.
Yeah.
Right? Destruction, this sounds very
Very dramatic.
dramatic, explosive, and
Kaboom. Removal of existing infrastructure, reduction of workspace.
well,
Okay.
that's not really true. It's not a reduction of the workspace because, and in the report from Drew, it says quite clearly that it would reduce the space between the workshop and the house, which has negative impact on the sun access and for the use of the remaining space. But so
maybe not even have that in there.
No, probably not.
Okay, and increase cost.
No, don't put the costs in.
No.
It would reduce the space between the workshop and the garage, and therefore that open space. That is the space that would be reduced.
Yeah.
But we're saying not to include that as hardship.
Okay.
Yeah, but it is if it is to an applicant, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you help me with that again, please? Existing infrastructure and
I don't know if the word unnecessarily is correct, but let's me first say unnecessarily reduce the space between the workshop and the house, which limits sun access and functionality. What
this is like sunlight, right?
Yeah, sunlighting.
Limiting. So it's not like you've got your son out there working.
Well, it definitely feels more tight. And you say, what's a meter? Well, a meter in that circumstance does make a difference.
Okay, is that okay? Can you see, is it a good size font?
Yeah, the functionality of the remaining space.
Sorry, okay.
Of the resulting space, remaining space.
Okay, and just a little reminder, it's minor in there. And whereas
Or moderate, if you want to use the same word.
Yeah, you use moderate. Yeah, but the bylaw says minor because it has to say minor.
the variance is minor, the hardship is moderate.
Yeah, it has to say minor because that's how the bylaw works.
Right.
Okay, the proposed development of the site is appropriate. That's kind of bland, but
Well, it is appropriate, so if you look at the items, right? So I wrote down it's appropriate development because it respects the neighborhood character. And I think, Rick, maybe you can confirm that because you drive by it every day.
Yes.
And that,
Okay.
And that it's it's a small scale building, and it is a significant aesthetic improvement from the aging pool and screening.
You know, okay, significant aesthetic improvement to the existing failing.
Yeah, aging pool and screening, because the screening is just as but of course, like you can argue that any new construction hopefully will do that, but the plan presented by the applicant have modest impact. It isn't like they're trying to get the biggest thing ever. You know what I mean?
Okay. So
And then another thing is that there are no trees removed. And what I said earlier is that whenever you start to take something out, like existing foundation walls and God knows what else, it's called an excavator. And before you know it, the site doesn't look the same. And of course, these trees have a root system. Now, you can say like what they do these days in different municipalities to keep a tree is just absolutely amazing. But for us to be totally casual about it, it's not necessarily easy, not necessarily correct. So what I'm saying is that there is a sincere effort made to retain the existing trees in the side yard and the boulevard. And for
sorry.
okay, all right,
Existing trees.
in the
Will
side yard and the
retained.
boulevard. Yeah, the we
The
retain.
site yard and the boulevard?
Yeah.
Okay.
Side yard. SIDE.
Pardon? Pardon?
It's the side yard, not the site yard.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And is there like, what do I have here building on the existing footprint? Is that not right?
And there's one other item. Sorry, what did you say? Oh, I was just first saying what I thought you would write, and then you're going to refine it, and then we have a discussion, right?
Yeah. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, there's no increase in site coverage or impermeable materials, which I see from an environmental point of view are all positives. There's
Sorry,
no
this is still in the
increase-
environment section?
Yeah, there's no increase in site coverage or impermeable materials. And then the other items that we said before, that if you tick them off, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5,
Mhm.
none of them raise any concerns.
Sorry,
But
the
not
impact
sure
on
how-
use on the enjoyment of the adjacent land.
Yeah, I don't think you really have to repeat that, because like you can argue that if you do something that does meet the bylaw, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 would probably not cause any issues either, right? So, but
So
if
you don't want me to state, we have in the past stated all of them. I'm just looking at all of our past resolutions. But you don't want to include that then?
okay, you want to read through it once, stuff for everybody, and then see. So, like at the end of this, there will be a vote, right? I guess, and then it's either yes, no, or we want to change something before we feel comfortable with it.
So sorry, I'm deleting sections 3, 4, and 5 from talking about impact on adjacent land.
Yeah, we can just check that. No, you can check that we've confirmed that all those items.
Okay, keep them on. Okay.
Yeah, you would leave them on because that's
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Fritz, I just kind of, okay. So this is all white now. Upheld. Okay. Chris, do you want to read it?
Where do I start?
At the top left corner.
It's a W.
Like, whereas the Board of Variance has heard the applicant and received and considered an email from one neighbor in support of the application. And whereas the Board of Variance finds that moderate hardship would be caused to the applicant if the bylaw or section 53.1 is complied with, in that it would require removal of existing infrastructure and unnecessarily reduce the space between the workshop and the house limiting sun access and functionality of the remaining space, comma. Now, I think that's an incomplete sentence fragment,
Unnecessarily and unnecessary.
whereas finds,
Do you mind if I do
Okay.
the grammar offline, Christopher? I can do.
no, and it's Chris, don't worry about Christopher.
Okay,
Okay, so, all right, fine.
okay, thank you.
So carry on. Whereas the requested variance is minor and whereas the proposed development of the site is appropriate in that it respects the neighborhood character, it is a small scale building and it is a significant aesthetic improvement to the existing aging pool and screening, and whereas the natural environment is protected and that I don't know. Yeah. And that the existing trees will be retained in the side yard. There's no increase in site coverage or impermeable materials. And whereas there is no impact on use and enjoyment of adjacent land, and whereas permitted uses and densities are not requested to be varied, might just say are not varied, the intent of the bylaw to preserve residential character, to preserve sightlines has been upheld. Therefore, be resolved that the Board of Variance, application number BOV, blah, 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 to reduce the minimum setback from a lot line that abuts a highway to 3.62 meters to allow the construction of an accessory workshop be allowed. Yeah, that is, that could be improved grammatically along the way through there, but
Okay, there's one
The-
piece under the intent of the bylaw, sorry, I didn't know what the intent of the bylaw is. Was it to preserve sightlines or preserve residential character?
Preserve the residential character.
Okay,
Sidelines don't really apply in this case.
okay, I don't know why I thought I heard that. Okay. Yeah, I'll do a little grammar check when the cameras and the paparazzi are gone, Chris.
yeah. And you use an app for that, do you?
Yeah, it's called the noggin.
Oh, it's better than the app.
It's called an education.
Good. The one that they don't pay highly for. The liberal arts education.
Yeah, exactly. Fritz, are you gonna bring this to a landing?
Yeah,
Move
to a vote, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Rick, you're first for some reason.
Gonna move
Yeah,
it?
I'm okay with this. One of the notes that you mentioned there was the light source between the house and this new proposed workshop. It really should be, I think, between the garage and the workshop rather than the house. The house is a long distance away from the workshop itself.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm okay with it. I think it's
Can I change that? Okay.
pardon?
I'm changing house to garage then.
Okay.
Chris?
I'm okay with it. I'm
Okay.
I'm not capitulating. I just had an issue about our custodial responsibility as Board of Variance, but
Yeah, I know what you
I'm okay
mean.
with
I'm kind of with you, but on the other hand, there's also real life and people that get affected by it. But I hear what you're saying for sure. So I don't have to vote, I guess, because it is already a majority.
Oh, come on.
But just for the record, I vote in favor.
We gotta get you, okay. There we go.
Just want to maybe thank Drew for putting this together and for the presentation, and Steph for you struggling with us through the application.
No. No. Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's good working with you guys the first time.
I
Well,
didn't
thank you.
remember what he said just then. What did he say? He talks faster than the rest of us.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I said
he
it. I
wants to hear
said
it again. Correct. It's like, pardon?
It's
Yeah,
age related.
I just said it's good to work with you guys for the first time.
It's
Sorry,
That
can
was
you
pretty
say that
fast
again?
too. I only have one other suggestion, Steph, and that is that your last minute thought of us possibly meeting in person was actually a great one.
yeah, I liked it too.
And we didn't have time to make a decision, but I'd like to suggest that we do that
No,
next.
we did. Fritz can't make it.
Yeah, because it was in the email came
It
in
works.
last night or something like that, or at least for me, and I can't reschedule my day and have suddenly in the middle of the day meeting on Bowen Island. Like, apologies, I'm not like the applicant in Hawaii, but I am in Vancouver.
Might be fun to all get together at your office.
Yeah.
Rich.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just kind of a nicer way of doing business, right? It is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've left Hawaii. Thank you, Fritz.
Yeah.
Oh, you did.
I'm gonna let you.
Okay.
Gosh, man. Oh, wait. Okay. So then, where were we? We had the discussion, we had the vote, and then there's 5 information items. Is that something that applies here or not?
No.
No. And then the island plan, what? No. So I think we adjourn the meeting, and it is
Can I just
1
make an
minute.
announce?
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Brett. We'll be having a volunteer appreciation event, third
Yeah.
week of June. I'm gonna send out an invitation to all of our volunteers during Volunteer Appreciation Week. It'll be at
You
the
make that
golf
too, right? You have-
course.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
you get to.
So this is a call for us to show up and appreciate the municipality?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'd be happy to come to that.
So the applicants are not invited, right?
No,
Staff
he's
is not-
busy
oh, yeah.
traveling.
Drew, will you be there?
Don't think so.
There's no invitation, Steph.
They want to see you.
Oh, okay.
Basically, any staff that works with committee members is invited.
Oh, okay. I'll come then.
There you are.
Applicants whose requests have been successfully discussed and dealt with should show up also.
I don't, Steph, this is a question for you.
Sorry, what'd you say?
The applicants who've been favorably treated might want to show up also.
Okay.
No, you want the applicants that have not been.
You're rabble rouser.
That's right.
Far more interesting.
Okay, Fritz, you were trying to call the meeting when I.
Okay, well, I adjourn the meeting, and it's now 3 minutes past 2.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yeah.